I didn't say this in the last video, and it shouldn't have to be said, but I'm not saying all mythicists um, are batshit loony and bigoted and crazy ideologues as Deity Free D. There are people, you know, there's a barrage of mythicist stuff lately since the zeitgeist, since the pagan parallel stuff got trounced by anti-theists. Anti-theists did the best job because they were pissed. They were like, did you know? Because, I mean, imagine how foolish, I mean, you would look if you're like, hey, you know, Mithras was born of a virgin, had 12 disciples, was crucified, and after 3 days rose from the dead. And then for anyone who did any cursory search of the internet or read David Ulansey's book or any book on Mithraism, just be like, no, he sprung fully formed from a rock, and he slaughters the cosmic bull. The only companions really are a scorpion and a dog, and he never died. He's an immortal constellation. He's never a human being. Or did you know Attis, and then you get the same thing? Osiris, get the same thing. There's still people who don't, I mean, who are still in the dark about zeitgeist. By that I mean still taking parallel stuff. Charlie asks, 100 years debunked. I still get them sometimes on my channels. It was taken from pagan. No. But there are people who aren't militant and just think, oh yeah, okay. I mean, it sounds reasonable enough. Even when I was self-identifying as an anti-theist, I saw right through zeitgeist because I actually read the New Testament. I already had read most of the church fathers by that point. But the sad thing is, not the sad thing, I'm embarrassed for some people. Again, not all, is that people don't know what they don't know. Again, I can't set it up. earlychristianwritings.com. Well, that's a Christian website. No, it's just giving you every single piece of writing. That's not even every single piece of writing. I don't think they have Julius Africanus on there. It's just a lot from the 1st century to the mid-3rd, I believe. I think they've updated it some. I already made a video about that. Yeah, it's just jacked up. They don't know what they don't know. People, well, I read this book. Well, I read the primary sources. And not National Geographic, but like archaeological journals and stuff like that. Gone through that. Had to write papers on stuff like that. I mean, anybody of any training in history, like anybody actually took higher level or pursued any higher learning courses in history or a history degree, or even just in your spare time. I mean, you don't have to do that because it's all at your disposal now. I mean, it's not all, but certainly the works are. You can get the Annals of Tacitus. You can get Jewish Wars. Yeah, I screw up where I was about to say Ignatius of Leon is Irenaeus of Leon and Ignatius of Antioch. All my old viewers from John the Hut Dweller and Yusuf Al Tahir will get that because I always confuse those for no good reason. Because yeah, it's just mix up that stuff. But they can get Pliny, the correspondence between Pliny and Trajan, Origin, and free too. I mean, well, not Tacitus or Josephus. I don't think you can get that online for free, but earlychristianwritings.com. I mean, you can just print off all of Tertullian's works, all of Ignatius's, and it doesn't. There's pseudo Ignatius. They don't have pseudo Ignatius on there. I don't believe they do. Ignatius' letter to Mary, no. The letter between Jesus and Abgar, those are actually important though because they show what Christianity was like at a certain point. When people were trying to, because all they had were these four gospels that don't. I mean, Mark. And immediately he went there, and immediately went there, and immediately went there. And Mark is the smoking gun. I mean, because it mentions stuff that off the cuff doesn't really. It only makes sense to the person writing it. And then it has this wicked. I mean, it's a long introduction to an earlier passion narrative that's dated basically as an eyewitness thing. And Mark, I think, was an eyewitness. Luke was I've gone into that before. Matthew was a Judaized form of Mark, and then Luke, who collected the stories, came back and tried to stick it to Matthew because hated that form of. And he was growing too big, and it wanted to back up Mark's original view. And then John comes up separately. So you had these four things, and it doesn't give you a lot. All the events are pretty. I mean, they're what's it called? In agreement, but not. I mean, there are some events in some Gospels that aren't mentioned in others, of course. Naturally, that would be, but the viewpoint of the writers is different. Luke and Mark match somewhat. Luke is a developed form of Mark. Matthew's Judaized, and John is Greek. From the early church, we know John comes from Ephesus. That's where that work came from. That's why the stuff, nothing outside of the New Testament. The New Testament isn't one book. It's multiple New Testament or multiple first century works that slowly came together. First, it was four Gospels and some of Paul's writings, and then John and Peter, and Second Peter, Second, Third John, hotly debated, almost didn't make it in. The Apocalypse was hotly debated. It's actually anti-Pauline. But all the stuff surrounding it and the non-canonical stuff, which doesn't mean the church rejected it because the church kept copying it down Um, they again a lot of these people, they don't know what they don't know. Well, I read a book by this guy. Do you know that scholars think that guy's a friggin' crackpot? Yeah, well, he has a PhD here, and he wrote this book. You don't think he's trying to push and sell books? That's what they're that's what they're trying to do. Um, yeah, but I mean, why is nobody? Why aren't the other hundreds and New Testament uh, New Testament studies scholars and archaeologists and calligraphists and all these people? Why aren't they writing books? Well, because they look at these people and they go, "You're a fucking idiot." Honestly, Earl Doherty. I mean, Marvin Myers and John Dominic Crossan, I couldn't stand them. But eh, now that there's now that these people have since aggressive atheism, this anti-theism has taken off, and we don't have Hitchens around to be a badass and to just say, knock it off with that crap, you know. Um, you've got these loons who are just going everywhere, and it's like, man, I miss Marvin Myers now. Um, and the Jesus seminar was a joke when it happened. John Dominic Carson and some movie makers, and oh, I got to cut this short, or else I'll go over time.